I was having a conversation with somebody about the Come After Me readings, and they said, I've just been really kind of discouraged lately because they have been reading through. I think it was a section in talking about David and a few others who were going through and wiping out some of these tribes that were left over in Canaan. And obviously, we see you talking about God's judgment. We see God's judgment on display when He commands the Israelites to kill man, women, and child of all these people. And so I was wondering if you could just, how is God's grace revealed in some of these situations? It's obviously very difficult to understand, or maybe even discouraging. I think that God's character is capable of just annihilation. What would you have to say about that?
Well, I love when I'm talking to people about that. I love to take them to a city called Jericho. And the Israelites come, they surround the city, and this particular group of people are supposed to be wiped out completely. And they send in spies, and you know the story. Right there, as God is getting ready to wipe out an entire city, a woman is able to save herself and her entire family through faith. So what that tells you is, even as God was preparing to wipe out an entire city, He was reaching out with grace and truth. And those who would repent had the chance, even down to the last second. So that tells you that if there comes times when everybody is killed, it's because nobody was willing to repent. And so the whole story of Jericho helps to bring both the judgment and the grace into perspective. I also take people back to the flood, and it's surprising to me, people have no problem with the flood, but they really have a problem with killing the Canaanites later on. And I'm like, guys, the flood wiped out far more people than the Israelites ever did later on. It wiped out men, it wiped out women, and it wiped out children and babies. If you're going to have a problem, let's just start right here with the flood. And I told my kids, I tell them the story. I said, imagine that your mom and I got into the car and we said, come on, kids, go with us. We're going to go on a ride. And you guys got into the car, and I drove off down the road, and I headed for a cliff, and I drove us right off the cliff and into the ocean and killed us all. Of course, my kids freaked out and promised to never go anywhere in a car with me ever again. I said, whose fault would it be that you died? And they looked at me and they said, it's your fault, Dad. You drove us off the cliff. I said, every single baby, every single child that was destroyed in the flood was destroyed because of their parents drove them off the cliff. Their parents would not listen to God. God begged them for years, countless years, to turn from their path of sin. They would not turn. And so in the end, when the flood came, they got their kids in the car and they drove them right off the cliff and killed them all. So we are killing ourselves as we refuse to repent, and here comes God's judgment. We have no one but ourselves to blame.